In this video, I'm going to show you how to take your audio podcast, turn it into a video, and automatically publish it to YouTube. So inside your Repurpose account, the first thing you want to do is go to the connections and add your audio podcast. So choose audio podcast from the list and say add connections. So I'm going to say Hanny's podcast. Now there's two ways to get your podcast or your iTunes URL. The first one is the easy way. You can go, for example, if your podcast is EO Fire, you say EO Fire Apple Podcasts. It's typically the first link. You click on it and copy the URL from up here and paste it here. The second way is to log into your podcast host and grab the feed from there. In Captivate's case, it's right up here. If I click this, it says my feed is copied, and right click and paste and click connect. And then if you haven't done so already, you need to add a YouTube connection. You go under YouTube and choose YouTube, add connection, give it a name, Handy's YouTube, and click connect. But before you do that, make sure that your YouTube account is verified. That way you can upload videos that are longer than 15 minutes without any issues. If you're not sure, just click here. It'll take you through the process and tell you if you're verified or not. I've already connected my YouTube earlier, so I'm going to cancel this. Then we're going to create our workflow. So I'm going to click the green button to create a new workflow, and I'm going to say podcast to YouTube, and I'd like to say full episode, just as a reminder that this is a full episode. Make sure your names are clear, because once you start adding a lot of workflows, it may get a little bit confusing. I'm going to say next. So what am I starting with? I'm starting with an audio podcast, and I only have one podcast connected, so it's going to show me my podcast, so I'm good to go. Next, I'm going to say what is my action? Well, I want to convert that audio into a video. Perfect. And since we're going to YouTube, I want to keep it as full episode. Perfect. The last step is, where do I want to send the final video to? Well, I'm going to choose my YouTube account. Now, I highly recommend that you create a playlist for your podcast. If you already have some playlists on your YouTube channel, you can select it from here. If you don't, that's okay. You can create a brand new playlist. It's a Repurpose Ninja podcast. Let's say that's the name of your podcast. And you say create playlist. It says it's been created. Perfect. So we made a playlist on YouTube. Now it's selected. So every video we publish is going to go to that playlist. Playlists are a great way to organize your content. Also a great way for people to discover more episodes after they're done watching one video on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and click create workflow. And if I click on view episodes, it shows me all my episodes from my podcast. Before I publish anything, I want you to go through the settings with me. And I'm not going to cover all the details, but I'm going to cover the critical ones. One, we are going to YouTube. So I highly recommend that you stick with horizontal template. Now, if you remember from the previous video, I showed you some samples of what they look like. We have 6 templates available here. If you want to see what it looks like, you can click the preview button. It gives you a screenshot of what it looks like. As a reminder, we have a title that we automatically put in for you, the title of your episode. We have a nice moving waveform, and then we have your artwork that we take from your podcast feed. I'm not going to dive into too much details here, but I do want to say that if you want to upload your own template, which I highly recommend, they're very easy to design. You can use a tool like Canva to design them. You just need to click this link here to download our template design specs, and it will give you examples of horizontal, vertical, square, etc. Once you're done designing your template, you can click here and choose it and upload it. But for this demo, I'm just going to choose one of the existing templates. Now, progress bar. Because we're doing the full episode, and episodes tend to be long, I don't recommend turning on the progress bar on the full episode. We'll use that feature when we do the clips in the next video. And last but not least, you can customize the color of that moving waveform that shows up. By default, it's white. You can click here and choose any color you want. Okay. There's some additional settings I'm not going to mess around with too much. If you have a brand or a video, a bumper video that you always add to all your YouTube videos, you can upload it here and it will automatically add it to your video before publishing to YouTube. So that's what we call an intro file and an outro file. You can do the same thing at the end. We can add a video at the end. But if you are doing an intro and outro for YouTube, just to note, the intro and outro have to match the final product. So we're going from audio to video in horizontal. So your intro and outro have to be a video and they have to be horizontal. Okay, you're gonna choose which videos to auto publish. By default, it says all. If you've already been publishing to YouTube some of your episodes, then you can change this to say on this date or newer. And then let's say starting tomorrow, I want you to publish only episodes starting May 19th onwards. So you have that option. If you're starting brand new, you probably want to leave it at all. The call to action, since we're going from audio to video, I would recommend to leave this off. And you know why I say that is because when you upload your episode to your podcast host, for example, Captivate or Libsyn or whatever podcast host you're with, there's a section to put in a description or show notes. Put all your links there. Once you do everything there, you don't have to do it again on YouTube or on Facebook. We take that information from your podcast episode and send that out to all the different platforms. But if you do want to add something specific, you can choose to add some kind of text or link before the description or after the description. And this could be something specific for YouTube only. Keywords. So these are the keywords that you want to add onto YouTube. We're not going to go into full SEO course. I would say pick 5 to 10 keywords that apply to your entire theme of your show. Put them here in the workflow settings so you don't have to keep typing them in every time. And we will take them and send them to YouTube. Keywords do help you get found on YouTube, but I wouldn't spend too much time unless you already have done the research in the past. Then you want to choose your privacy status, whether they're public, whether it's private or unlisted. If you're testing, I would go private or unlisted just to make sure the video looks good. Once you're happy with 1 or 2 videos, then you can change it to public. And then of course, YouTube category, pick one that makes sense for your type of podcast show. Okay, and click save. So I'm going to go ahead and click publish to publish my episode. When I click publish, automatically it takes the title for my podcast host. When I uploaded my episode there, it used the same title, which is nice. I don't have to type in the title again. Same goes for the description. It automatically pulls in the entire description and it puts it on to my description here. So when I click publish, this information gets passed to YouTube automatically. If you've entered keywords in your workflow settings, they're going to appear here. You also have the opportunity to add to them specific keywords for this particular episode. And you have 2 additional options here, which I don't recommend you do. One is to upload episode-specific artwork for your video. So what this means is this square image that you see here, that is your artwork that we pull in from your podcast feed. If you've watched earlier the previous video, we recommended you upload an episode-specific image, your guest image, for example, to your podcast host, and then Repurpose will automatically use that version here for you. But if your podcast host doesn't support that option, you can go in and upload a square image here, which we will drop in instead of your default podcast artwork. And last but not least, you can upload a custom YouTube thumbnail. So if you have a designer or you have a YouTube thumbnail, you can design one. Personally, I wouldn't spend the time on it. Maybe that's something you can do later on, but keep it simple. Since the video is, pretty static, the images don't change that much. Doesn't really matter which thumbnail comes up. You're gonna have a nice clear title. You're gonna have your guest's face over here. It's gonna be appealing on YouTube as a thumbnail. So best to leave it. And if you have some more time, you can always add one in going forward. And you can go ahead and publish, or I can schedule. If I publish, it's gonna go right to YouTube right now, or I can schedule it. My personal preference is to schedule content. So that way I can have control on what day and what time they go out, and click schedule. When you do that, it enters the queue, and then within a few minutes, it's going to start preparing the video. So when you schedule content, it prepares the video file so you have a chance to see it before the published date. And when it's done, you'll see the word scheduled. You can hover over it. You'll see the scheduled date when it's going to be published. But before that, it gives you a preview icon. So I can click here and watch what it looks like. It looks good to me. I'm happy with it. I have my episode guest image here. I have the title automatically inserted. I have a nice waveform. Looks good. And just leave it. It's going to get scheduled and published on that time. When publishing to YouTube, you do have the option to go to auto mode. To do that, you hover over here and you click auto. But just a warning, when you do this, it's going to add every single episode in your entire podcast show and get them onto YouTube for you. If you don't want that right now, you can go to settings and just change this option where it says choose which date to auto publish. Set it to be, for example, today's date, or for example, tomorrow's date. That way it won't publish anything in the past. It will only publish things going forward. So if I leave it on today's date and click save, I can turn on auto publish. Now the reason why I'm okay with auto publish is because my content gets scheduled with my podcast host. So I'm very consistent with a podcast. So I recommend you do the same. You publish a podcast episode to go live on your podcast feed. Let's say 9 a.m. on Tuesday morning. Let's say that's your weekly show. Then what happens is when this is in auto, within an hour or so, the video will be made by Repurpose. When it's in auto, you don't need to log in. It automatically makes the video and automatically uploads it to YouTube for you. So one less thing for you to worry about. And this works perfectly because we're publishing the full episode. When we go do clips in the next video, it won't make much sense because you don't want to upload several clips on the same day. The last thing I want to show you is what it looks like on YouTube itself. If you recall, I made a suggestion for you to add clickable timestamps in your show notes. And here's one of the reasons. YouTube has the ability to take those timestamps and make them clickable. So if I click here, it's going to jump the video to the 30-second mark automatically. You're giving your viewers a great resource here by them allowing them to jump to certain parts of the content where you give a lot of value or your guest gives a lot of value.